Do you know what, I want to bring this up because I was just talking about it. Anybody here know what an operational fund transfer is? It's the number one budget item in the state of Texas every 2 years. It's the biggest expenditure, operational fund transfers. You'd think we would know what that is. It's $124 billion every 2 years. Now, our budget has to be balanced constitutionally, and we have to have a balanced budget in the state of Texas. We spend $124 billion every 2 years on something called operational fund transfers. We have 174 plus state agencies. We had 174, now there's more because of COVID. Got to find a way to spend that money. And basically, if this agency over here, and this agency, and this agency, and this agency, they start sharing money, they got to make sure that everybody's funded. So if they're paid for and this one's lacking, they're going to keep that money going around. They keep finding things to spend it on. That's the whole deal. They want to make sure that the money, because they're not giving it back to you. They want to make sure that it gets spent so they can justify doing it at the next legislative session in 2 years. These are the kind of things that have got to stop. That's not Texas. It's certainly not fiscal conservatism. I'm a constitutional guy. I believe that the Constitution was written to keep government in line and ultimately to keep the government overreach out of your life. And we're seeing that happen. They're using the Constitution as toilet paper right now. Look, I've read the Constitution. I understand a good portion of it, both the U.S. and the Texas Constitution. And I've read just about everything I can get my hands on COVID and pandemics and all of that. I don't understand any of that garbage. But neither do the doctors or the scientists, apparently. But I have read the Constitution, and I know the Constitution wasn't written to keep you healthy, and it wasn't written to keep you masked up. It wasn't written to keep you safe. The Constitution was written to keep you free. And folks, I want to be free. I want to have so much freedom that I don't know what to do with it. Because I think that at the end of the day, that's what the 10th Amendment of the Constitution is all about. It's about making sure that government stays local. It's in the hands of the people. Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution says that this is a government of the people, to keep a republican form of government. And when the government that's over you gets out of hand, we have the ability and the right to alter or abolish it. That's your right. And right now, they're being taken from us. So I want to have so much liberty in the state of Texas that we look at a guy like Ron DeSantis and pat him on the head and say, buddy, that was a good effort. Right now, we're leading in nothing as a state. The new Cato poll came out the other week. We're not even in the top 10 freest states in the nation, according to the poll. That's shocking. We're ranking in the high 30s and the low 40s in terms of opportunity, healthcare, education. We're in terrible shape. We know that our property taxes are out of control. We know the border is wide open. We know that we have an energy crisis. Most people aren't talking about it, but we have a water crisis, and you'll hear that in certain places you go in the state. We've got a lot of things that we need to deal with here, folks. We've got gender modification in children that hasn't been handled. We still have taxpayer-funded lobbyists that are controlling the game. We know that people that are born with one biology can go and compete at high school and college levels with people that were born with another biology. That's got to change. We got CRT, we've got SEL, we've got pornography in our schools that's being passed off as curriculum as well as books in the library. These are the kind of, that's not my Texas, and I don't believe it is yours either. So I contend, and I want to take some questions here in a minute. We can get into policy. But I remind everybody, back in 1773, some of our founding fathers, they went out into Boston Harbor and they started pouring tea off of the boats as a protest against the taxation without representation because they were feeling tyranny from King George. And I'm encouraging people wherever I go across the state, I say it's time for us to go to Travis County and have ourselves an Austin Tea Party. Because we're not being represented, our priorities are not being focused on. They're making fun of you, these elected representatives. Whenever you have 103 House reps and senators in Austin, and only 19 have called for a fourth session to make these vaccine mandates by employers illegal. 19 out of 103 Republicans, by the way, let me clarify what I said. 103 Republicans and only 19 have called for it. We got a problem. They're quite literally thumbing their nose at the people who put them there, and they're mocking us. And it all comes down because of this governor. Most people here would be hard-pressed to tell me one piece of legislation in the last 7 years that Greg Abbott has stuck his neck on the line to accomplish. There's only been one that I know of, and that was pre-K for all. And that was his wife's doing, so he had to do that. But there's nothing else that he's pushed for. He didn't want to sign constitutional carry, and by the way, it's not constitutional, it's permitless. Because if this law had been passed in 1776, then Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton wouldn't be allowed to carry a gun because they wouldn't be old enough. The heartbeat bill, I like it. It's a start. I'm a pro-life guy. I understand that that's a very hot topic. But I believe that life is precious. I believe that we're created in the image of God. And I believe that there's no place for murder of the unborn. And I believe to the degree that we speak out for those innocents who don't have a voice, that God continues to honor the land that He blesses. That's my conviction. That's where my heart is. I'm a father of 5. I love them. I don't like all of them the same, but you understand what I'm saying? Your parents as well. I have good kids. 2 of them one just graduated at University in Alabama. Another one is graduating in the spring from a different university in Alabama. And I beat their ass. I really did. Growing up, I made them into good kids because I beat their ass. And I believe... I think we're losing a generation. We're not teaching our kids to teach with complexity of thought or critical thinking anymore. We've got a school system, not an education system anymore. Our teachers' hands are being tied. They're being forced to train for a test rather than molding and training and educating and testing and evaluating these young minds. And right now we're sending them off to these lefty, lunatic, progressive universities and colleges. And by the way, the Board of Regents that oversees our universities and colleges, every single one of them is a lunatic, progressive lefty, and each one of them are handpicked and appointed by Greg Abbott. That ought to tell you something. It all comes down to the money. But our kids are going there, and they're graduating after 4 or 5 years, coming out hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to have a degree in undecided. These are the kind of things that have got to stop. And folks, I'm encouraging you. And I'll talk with you, I'll answer questions. And we can deal with some policy things, certainly. But I want you to help me. I want you to help me hold this man's feet to the fire. We've had 4 political forums. We've had 4 candidate forums. Now we've got 4 more planned. He won't show up to any of them. And I will tell you, even if he wins this primary and it comes down to him and O'Rourke, he will not debate Bobby O'Rourke. Because he cannot defend his record. Can't do it. I'm going to be speaking to a group of Democrats on Sunday in Dallas. I'm not backing off anything. Democrat women, too. Pray for me. In fact, start fasting right now. Let me get one last sip of beer. But they call me. Oh, almost lost it. They called me and they said, will you come speak? It's the Delta sorority. They're in Dallas. Yeah. Gonna be fun. And Alan West and I agreed to come. Greg Abbott had agreed to be there until he found out we were coming. And he suddenly had a schedule conflict. This is what we're dealing with. You ever known a judge that wanted you to debate with him? Argue with him? Greg Abbott's a judge. He served on the Supreme Court of Texas. He was the Attorney General. He's a judge. He sees things in black and white. He doesn't care about the people or the personality or the nuances of the situation. Again, he's operating by the polls. He doesn't want to be squabbled with. He doesn't want to debate. He's a judge. And he's handling things in that same way. But unfortunately, it's dictatorial. So, folks, let's get Texas back to where it needs to be. Let's get government out of our lives. You know, I keep saying, let's make politics boring again. Why are we arguing online about politics day in and day out with our neighbors? I mean, I get that we've got this inner angst and we're frustrated, but wow, we're at each other's throats. Let's make politics boring again. Let's regain Texas values. Let's establish Texas sovereignty. Let's make sure the 10th Amendment, which is oft forgotten, a true reality in the state of Texas. Let us lead by example for the rest of the nation so that we show them what liberty looks like, what the rule of law looks like. help me do that. You know, my website, prather2022.com. We've run this thing on a shoestring budget. We really have. Don Huffines loves to talk about his field offices. My field office is parked right over here. And I've put a lot of miles on it in the last year and a half, traveling across the state. And I believe that when a person's running for office, if they're very wasteful with the money you give them to run, they're going to be very wasteful with the money that you give them when they're in that office. And so trying to lead by example. And so every little bit helps us because of my reach, because of my platform, because of my voice. We're able to do a whole lot for a whole lot less. So we're able to stretch dollars. We're able to make things happen that otherwise would cost people hundreds of thousands. And so I'm thankful for those who donate, those who give. I promise you we're good stewards of it. And we're making sure that when we have that opportunity that we're honoring it. You can also, if it makes you feel better, you can go to beto22.com. It still comes to me. We bought a lot of websites early on. Beto22 comes to me, but prather2022.com, I think there's the QR codes on some of the papers out there. You just take a picture of it and take it to the site. We appreciate it. I greatly do, really do. We got about 45 more days. Early voting is going to start on the 14th of February, Valentine's Day. Wow. And March 1st is primary day. It's going to be very interesting. You start seeing certain polls that are coming out. They're all baloney. For one thing, you can't poll my followers. The people that are supporting me, you can't poll them because most of them are a bunch of wild-eyed conservatives who aren't going to answer the phone. You got these social media influencers out there that represent tens of millions of people. You can't poll them because they've never voted in a primary. So, don't believe the numbers that you're seeing out there. And let me tell you something. The reason we keep winding up with guys like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and Joe Biden for half a century is because of this mindset. Well, I'm going to support them because I know they can win. That's the wrong mindset to have. You see, whenever they start looking at donors and they see every single dollar that comes in, to Greg Abbott and his administration, a dollar equals a vote. And so when they start seeing that, it scares them. And it scares him further into the right direction. And I want to encourage you to help me do that. And I believe that we could do a lot of good come March 1st when we overwhelm the ballot box. Because you don't trust your election process right now. I've got some great solutions for election integrity. They're controversial. They're not politically correct, but I'm okay with that. They'll work. I've got controversial ideas when it comes to the border. That's okay. They'll work. When it comes to your property taxes, they'll work. When it comes to these mandates, it'll work. When it comes to human trafficking and all of these other issues, our education system, I'm telling you, we got solutions that'll work because it's common sense for Texas. That's what we've gotten away from. We've gotten too political. It's time to make it right again and make Texas, Texas. Thank you guys for coming out. Is there any questions off the top? Yes, sir. Sarge.
I was in the service for 21 years, 4 combat units. I've listened to you for the last 4 or 5 years. I've enjoyed everything that's come out of your mouth, almost everything.
I was about to say, I feel the need to apologize already.
But I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, and I'm a great-grandfather, and I love this country. And I've heard you say so many times how you feel about our military and our veterans, and I tell you what, it resonates. And if we could just for a second, I want to show you how much it resonates. If all the veterans that are here tonight would stand up, and if you're standing, if you just raise your hand, please stand up or raise your hand if you're a veteran. Look at this. I took 7 of them because I was in for 21 years. In this state, we have 1,475,000 veterans. And tomorrow, I'm going to get on my computer and my 27,000 connections on LinkedIn, and I want every veteran that just stood or raised your hand to reach out to the other veterans of the great state of Texas and tell them to vote for Chad Prather.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. The only military on the planet that truly exists to liberate people and not oppress. The American military. Men and women that are willing to put on a uniform every day with a willingness to serve, sacrifice, and potentially give their lives for liberty. The fight for liberty is real right now. We know that. And I said at Grace Woodlands the other night in our candidate forum, Don Huffine said 30 days he'll close the border down. He's got a plan. I said, Don, that's not enough. We'll close it down in 6 days. I said, I got half a dozen retired Special Forces guys that are chomping at the bits. They'll fix it real quick. And let me say about the border, you want to shut the border down? Yes, we've got to enforce the laws that are on the books. Yes, we do need to build a wall where the wall is feasibly possible. Fortunately for our state, we have a lot of geographical barriers that are already helping us out. You don't need a full wall over all of the miles. You don't have to do that. But we have to have a human wall. We have to enforce or at least allow the men and women who have taken an oath to defend us and to enforce the law to actually do their job. Texas National Guard, we've had 4 suicides with the Texas National Guard in the last few weeks. We had a 5th accidental suicide. We had a 6th attempted suicide that was thwarted by his brothers who found him. The reason those are happening is because they don't have any clear marching orders. I have a spreadsheet of almost 400 names of Texas National Guardsmen and women who have not been paid. The payroll is not being fulfilled by the state. Do you think that they are highly motivated to go down there and do a job when there's no clear communication, no mission, no marching orders to go down there, and they're not being paid? These are volunteers. They're being pulled off their jobs, pulled away from their families, having to live on top of each other in trailers. And if you look at those pictures that the Abbott campaign keeps putting out there, you saw them down there with their shields, those MPs. First of all, they were not in the right gear. It was a photo op. They were not in right formation. And not a single picture I saw anybody had a deployment patch. That means they're newbies. They're brand new people down there. They're taking any volunteer that they can get. We've got to make sure that the right people are on that border enforcing the law. We've got to make sure that the Texas DPS has the full material and human resources to do their job. And there's a lot of resources that are not being deployed. We've got to make sure that the Texas State Guard is equipped and able to do that. We've got to remember a very constitutional word, and that is equipping our militias. There are civilians out there who are willing to go down there and serve as well. And by the way, Article 4, Section 7 says that in a situation like this, the governor of the state becomes the commander-in-chief, and it's his job to raise up the State Guard to do this job. That's not happening. I've seen video of National Guardsmen helping people out of the river and into Texas. But once they're here, there's a federal Uber driver called the Border Patrol. It's not being allowed to do their job, and they're picking them up, taking them to a processing station, slapping them on the wrist, giving them a court date that's 2 years out. If they're in McAllen, they get an airplane ticket with a piece of paper that says, I don't speak English, help me get to my gate. And $400. And money. Listen, I've seen it, and they're down there by the hundreds in McAllen Airport. Go to Harlingen, go down there and look. It's covered up. I've seen the buses leaving out of Del Rio, Texas. Those white buses. And they're just going out of there under the cover of night, out into the interior of the U.S. They'll never find them again. Folks, we've got to disincentivize while they're coming. They're coming here for health care. They're coming here for welfare. They're coming here for education. We're putting them in colleges. We're paying their way. It's the old Tom Bodette Motel 6, we'll leave a light on for you. Got to turn that light off. We've got to detect. We've got to deter. We've got to detain. We've got to deport. And we got to defend. The defend part is not politically correct. I get that. But I'm really tired of seeing videos of cartel members disemboweling human beings with hunting knives and cutting heads off and kicking them around on the floor like soccer balls. These are animals that know no other way of life. They're there to brutally kill people. And no one coming across that border right now is doing so without the help of the cartels. We have 25 bridges that are coming over from Mexico into Texas. We've got to shut that down and make sure that those are policed to see what's coming across. We've got a set of 30. We need a strip of 30 miles. It's watching our highways and watching that piece, almost a no man's land through there, that makes sure that those illegals are being stopped and pushed back. We put that human wall on the river that says you're not getting out of that river. You're not coming across. You're not being allowed in. But see, the Republicans want them coming over. The Democrats want them coming over, all because of money and votes. We're all guilty. Politicians love open borders. It's more taxes, it's more workforce, and it's more votes. We need to make sure that Texas banks, that there's a 12 or 14% transaction fee every time an illegal does business with a bank. That'd put over $1 billion in the Texas coffers every year. Oklahoma does it, 1% transaction fee. It gives them $14 million a year. Why in the world are we letting Oklahoma do something we're not doing it here in Texas? We've got far more illegals here. We charge a higher percentage. Make it impossible for the cartels and the illegals to do business right here. There's so many different things. And not to mention the fact, as I alluded to earlier, they're shooting across the river. We got to be able to shoot back. This ain't nice, folks. Listen, if I was president of the United States, we would own the first 200 miles of Mexico. That's not politically correct, and I know that's what the newspapers want to run with, but I also think we ought to be sitting on a throne of Chinese skulls, but that's another story. We're at war, folks. Whether you want to believe it or not, we're at war and we're losing. This debacle in Afghanistan was all about the Chinese going and getting lithium out of the ground. That's why Joe Biden, who sold out to the Chinese, pulled out. It's insanity. And we're putting up with it in the name of political correctness. We got to stop making ideologies into policies and apologizing to our enemies. This is dumb. If I was the president of the United States, we'd build a wall on Mexico's soil. Jeremy.
Okay, two questions. First one, because my wife's voice doesn't travel.
Don't blame her.
What would you do about the CMS mandate for medical workers in Texas? And the second question is, how do we own our homes after we finish paying our mortgages off?
Well, the first thing as far as the mandates have got to be illegal. We've got to pass legislation that says it's illegal, but there's got to be legislation, as we were talking a little while ago, there's got to be legislation that has teeth on it. If you're going to do business on the soil of Texas, then we have to be able to penalize you if you're going to disobey our laws. I understand that you have global companies out there. You also have folks with federal funding, things like that. You got to make sure that if you're going to do business in Texas, that there are ramifications